It's been called the laptop from hell. What? Is it really? Allow me today to present to you an alternative theory of the Hunter Biden laptop story. Cammie is getting her surgery today, so I'm not actually here. I actually recorded this last night. And I don't want to take up a lot of time today, but there's some things here about this story that intrigue me in a lot of ways. You all know the story, of course, the Biden secret emails, New York Post, and the reactions to this story are all over the place. It's a fake story. No, wait, it's collusion between Donald Trump and the Russians and Putin and now even Iran. It's not true. It's fake. But let me ask you a question here. What if this story is exactly what the Democratic Party, wants to have happen? Stay with me here. I know it's a little weird, but stay with me here. The Democrats, back in the beginning of the year, had a problem. The problem was Donald Trump. Donald Trump must go. Donald Trump must be defeated. The problem they had is that they had, 16, 25, 36 people up there on that stage, none of whom could possibly have beaten Donald Trump. I know some of you say, but we had these conversations back during the primaries. Bernie Sanders was going to get absolutely bitch-slapped by Donald Trump, and everybody knew it. The Democrats did not have a candidate that could beat Donald Trump, except possibly, maybe, one guy, Joe Biden. Joe Biden was the compromise candidate of compromise candidates. He's a guy that, we all know Joe. We all know that he's Joe. Joe Biden, as Saturday Night Live refers to him. But he's at least got a shot, if not an outright probability, of beating Donald Trump. He's all we've got. And so we watched the primaries go the way they did. They ended up choosing Biden not because they wanted him, but because they had to have him. And of course, the assumption is being made by everybody on the right that he is not going to stay as president. That once he's in office, it will become obvious that he's senile or whatever. And so he will step down because he loves his country that much. The problem is that Joe Biden has made noises that he doesn't see it that way. That he's not putting all this effort into running for president just so he can quit. He doesn't see it that way, and that may have been the impetus behind Nancy Pelosi's incredibly obtuse 25th Amendment committee. Now, you remember a few weeks ago, she came out with this thing and seemingly drunkenly said, it's not about Trump. Not about Trump. And most people believed her when she said that. In fact, even Rush Limbaugh was talking about how she's right. It's not about Trump. It's about Biden. It's about getting rid of Biden later on. The problem with that theory is, of course, under the 25th Amendment's terms, either Joe has to be completely incapacitated or he has to agree to this. And the odds of him agreeing to this were, let's put it simply, just about the same as Donald Trump agreeing to it. So, in my view, and I said this to several people, the whole thing was just a drunken attention whore. That's all it was. Nobody's been paying attention to me for several days. I need people to pay attention to me. Here's an outrageously stupid idea that nobody will go for. But at least it'll get my name on the front page of the paper. And by saying it's not about Trump, I'll be taking a swipe at Trump. And that's what people expect her to do. The question that's left, though, is what if this insane idea does have merit, and maybe it's not about Trump after all. Maybe. I have to assume that Nancy Pelosi knows more about what's going on in the news than you or I do. I have to assume that the Democrat Party leadership knew that this Hunter Biden story was going to break, and they had to be making some sort of defensive plan. It was obvious that denying the story wasn't going to work, because it hasn't. It was obvious that claiming that the story was collusion between Trump and Russia to plant this material wasn't going to work, because it didn't. I don't think that the Democratic Party, believes that the story is fake. I don't think they believe that it's collusion. I think they know that the story is absolutely 100% gospel truth. I think they know that. So what do you do? What to do? Well, a long time ago, there were a couple of guys, these two guys. One of them would actually go on to become a fairly successful radio talk show host, G. Gordon Liddy there on the left, back when he had hair, and E. Howard Hunt on the right. And they were known as the White House plumbers. They were known as the people who fixed the White House's leaking problems and the likes of that. And these were the two guys who, you may know, were tasked with breaking into the Watergate Hotel, the Democrat Party national headquarters, and stealing documents or finding stuff that would, quote, help the re-election of the president, because that's who they worked for. I'm not making this part up. The Committee for the Re-election of the President. Creep. For a president who was going to win in a landslide anyway, but was a paranoid delusional and was convinced that he had enemies everywhere. Now, what you need to understand is that this happened before the election. This happened in early 1972, and those two were arrested in June of 1972. In other words, a full quarter, 90 days at least, before the presidential election of 1972, which Richard Nixon won in a landslide. I remember my dad voting in that because he came to my elementary school to vote, and I was in line for lunch, and my dad was in line to vote. It's kind of cool. The 1972 election wasn't even close, and Nixon won it. The Watergate break-in, while it was not a secret, while it had made the news, it had clearly had some kind of tie to the president, but it had virtually no impact at all on the 1972 election. None at all. But by August of 1974, of course, things were much different. And by the time Nixon was, as Kissinger said, a man awake in his own nightmare, trying to count votes in the Senate, trying to, if it did go to impeachment, he figured he had 60 votes, so he was safe. And then the triple whammy happened, and the articles of impeachment were passed, and by 300 votes, well over. In other words, a lot of Republicans jumped ship on him. And by the time it was clear that he was going to be impeached and he was going to lose, Richard Nixon fell on his sword. Our long national nightmare was over. President Ford told the Americans, and he resigned, waving in his helicopter, kind of cool on the lower part of this newspaper, and I didn't print it out for you, but he was welcomed by cheering crowds when he got to California later that afternoon. Now, what you need to understand here, what I'm trying to get to you to see, is that the crime that occurred, by the way, Richard Nixon probably goes to prison for a crime, if he doesn't get pardoned by Gerald Ford. This is a crime that occurred before the election. You with me here? You following what I'm saying? The crime, even though it was known, even though the arrests had been made, even though the investigation had begun, had virtually no impact whatsoever on the election. None. Nixon ends up resigning. Now, what if this laptop isn't the disaster for the Democrats that we keep assuming that it is, and that the president keeps saying it's the laptop from hell? The conventional wisdom is that Joe Biden is going to win in a landslide. That's the conventional wisdom right now, all on Nixon 72. He's going to win, and he's going to win big. I don't care whether you believe that or not. I'm not going to tell you whether I believe that or not. I'm telling you what the conventional wisdom is right now. However you feel about that. This is what the Democratic Party is thinking. But once he's in office, what starts to happen? Newspaper stories start admitting that the Hunter Biden laptop story may be more troubling than the president admits. Someone will ask the question, I guarantee it, what did the president know? And when did he know it? It's the same question they've been asking since Nixon's time. What did the president know? When did he know it? The investigations will become more and more intense. Public concern about the story will become focused. Do we have a criminal as a president? I think the people have a right to know the president's not a crook. Will Joe Biden say that? I'm not a crook. Does the pressure increase? And what happens then? Do the Democrats circle the wagons? Again, conventional wisdom, they're going to control the Senate as well. So there's no real possibility of impeachment, but there is a possibility of a red wave in the midterms. All right, we protect him for 2 years, but what happens in, 2022 when the midterms come around and we get absolutely slaughtered? Then impeachment could start real easily, couldn't it? Do they circle the wagons, or do they start looking for another solution? Do they start looking for something else? Huh? Remember Nancy Pelosi's 25th Amendment Committee? What if this committee gets together and they start, because assuming that the Democrats win and they control the Senate and the presidency and they sign this law and they make it clear to Joe, maybe it's not about you, it's, for the future of the president, it's for the best for the country. And so he signs off on it, or maybe he doesn't, I don't know. But they have the committee anyway. They start looking at it, and they come to the conclusion that, the president's in this deeper than he should be. Perhaps a crime, in fact, has been committed, and the president might actually be a crook. The Democrats see that as really bad. I mean, ask yourself that question, especially those of us on the political right who have been pontificating for months since the choice was made that Kamala Harris is the president in waiting. Do you really think the Democrats would see that laptop now as being tragic, as being terrible, as being destructive to their chances? Or do you think they would start to see it as what they really, really wanted all the way back in those primaries, but couldn't achieve? Kamala Harris.